Okay, we're recording. Hi, everybody. My name is Tish, and welcome to Grounding into Simplicity. Today, I have a very dear friend and sister of mine here that's going to talk with us about what it means for her to be grounded into simplicity and share about her gifts. Her name is Kristen. She's currently living in California, and we met in Costa Rica 7 years ago. So it's such an honor and privilege. Welcome, Kristen. I'm so happy to have you here with us today. And I would like for you to just maybe share where you are currently and how is this whole shifting in perspective and consciousness feeling for you in this moment right now.
Okay. Well, that's going to be a mouthful. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I love you so much. Okay, so where am I currently, like, energetically with everything that's going on, or?
Yeah, maybe just if you could just give us like a little bit of share of where you are, how you're feeling right now, and like, I know everything is constantly changing and shape shifting, but where are you at right now?
Well, the current moment, I mean, if we are talking about that much simplicity, like, I feel so much joy right now because I'm connecting with you and we're talking about things that are so meaningful, and you and I are in our zones of genius. Like, I was thinking about it today. I was setting an intention just as we both did before we came on, and I was saging and doing my Palo Santo. I was listening to, like, the music that opens up my heart, things that I like to do on a regular basis, for myself, but also when I'm going to create a space to get into my work. And I was just thinking about how important my sacred work is to me, and that is my life. So I'm feeling great right now. But as you said, I'm kind of a practice what I preach type of thing. And one of the things I preach is to be intuitive and in the flow of life. And when we do that, it's not a linear path. It's
Mhm.
very cyclical. We're very connected to cycles. I love talking about the energetic seasons that is related to the astrological seasons. And so with that, it's just this ever present ebb and flow, you know? So you just caught me on a good day.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing that. I feel like, you know, for me, I've moved through these different cycles of deep grief and then joy, and some days is good and some days is a little bit more challenging. And so it's just so delicious to see you and so vibrant. Your energy is so widely open. I can really feel that sense just even through the screens. You're very uplifting right now. So it's so beautiful to connect with you in this space. I want to go straight into, the question of grounding, what it looks like, what it feels like for you, and how has the practice of grounding helped you, in your transition or this state of being that we now call the awakening. And share with the people that's listening, and just from a wider perspective too, not just one tool, but what really happens when we are ungrounded, and what really happens when we start to wake up, and what are the process for you and the experiences that you can share from that.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So many things. All right. So I think, one, I'm excited to talk about this topic because I'm like the ultimately, like, worst ungrounded person by nature if I'm not careful. For those of you who know Ayurvedic, I'm very Vata, like, just Vata in my beingness. I can hold a lot of air energy. Also, I'm highly sensitive to this world. So for those of my highly sensitive friends, and a lot of my audience is highly sensitive and empathic, um, we oftentimes have such a sensitivity to this world that it becomes very traumatic just being here. And so from a young age, we learn how to disassociate out of our bodies because our bodies aren't very safe places. Or for a lot of us, it's actually easier if you find yourself as an extremely intuitive person to move up to those higher chakras and out of your body, connect to higher, connect to God, connect to higher energies. That's sometimes easier for some people. Some people it's not, but for me it was that case. And so that just makes me in general, like, more prone to being ungrounded. So I had to learn the hard way how important it is. And now it is one of my biggest messages and battle cries, especially if you are somebody who finds that, either one, you disassociate or have in the past from traumatic events. 2, you find yourself to be a highly sensitive person. Any number of these, they don't have to be in combination. A highly sensitive or empathic person. If you find it easier to channel higher energies, that sort of thing. Like, and then our life in general is ungrounding. Being on the phone as much, disconnected, living in the comforts of our homes and our cars and all those things. Super grateful for all of that. But that also disconnects us from the earth, from touching the earth, from being connected to the rhythms and cycles. We do, you know, as women, we can oftentimes be on birth control and things like that that changes our rhythms. Or just be, yes, like out of that like touch with how our food is made. We just continually create this rift, this void between us and our natural cycles, which I think is a grounding thing. So in all those ways, we can also be grounded. So depending on all the things that affect you, you know, that's like we could be more and more ungrounded. And I did have to learn the hard way. So for me, if I'm ungrounded, I am prone to anxious energy. You know, where some people might be irritable. For me, it's definitely anxious energy. It's definitely in my head. Now, these are practices I practice all the time to get grounded. Like I am, you know, this is something that I take like medicine now because it can affect me so severely. My nervous system can get out of whack, so I can get very shaky. I can get very cold. Like it's like I'm not feeling life force energy in my body. It's a very uncomfortable feeling for me. And then it will show in the outside world. And then I'll attract a lot of things based on that ungrounded energy that are very unpleasant. So that's usually how it affects me. Mostly like that ungrounded, anxious energy that feels like unnerved, like I can't settle in, I can't focus. It's very hard to feel aliveness and joy. Like I feel very disconnected. So yeah, lots of unpleasant things when I'm ungrounded.
Yes, no, I can definitely resonate with that and feeling the ungroundedness just settling into my bones. Like I also get very cold when I'm ungrounded, and I've realized it's when I go away from the jungle and go back into the city and I don't have the earth underneath my feet as often, my body and my bones just gets cold, and I get very flustered, meaning I feel like it's just too much to do. I said I'm a little bit like, you know, ungrounded feeling. I wanted to go a little bit into, you know, what does it feel like? Like explain to me a little bit more about, you know, hypersensitivity. What does that mean and what does that look like?
Oh, hypersensitivity. Okay. As always, there's positives and negatives about it. Usually if you were born hypersensitive and nobody taught you how to use that as a gift, a lot of us feel like it's kind of a curse because you become, your energy is able to merge with other people's energy more often. So a lot of people feel as if they're absorbing people's energies because you can sort of know and what people feel. It becomes sort of a bad habit to stay safe. I mean, I say bad habit because it's kind of an unconscious way of coping through difficult times. Is if I can merge with your energy and I can know what you're feeling, I'll stay safe because I'm one step ahead of how you are. So you know, that's one way you really entrain with other people really quickly if you're not careful with your own energy, if no one's ever taught you. Then there's also sensitivity to light, sound, frequency. I know that I have to be very careful with honestly, everything like, you know, not like certain scents. Like since I was a kid, like perfume, if I was around someone with a perfume, I would have a headache immediately. Before it was cool to use free and clear detergent for your clothes, you know, like 30 years ago, I had to do it because I'd break out in a rash everywhere. And just, yeah, you just feel a lot. You feel a lot, physical sensations, but also emotional sensations. I think that they're, you know, people who are highly sensitive, and, you know, this has been studied, they have more mirror neurons than maybe the average person. So you're really picking up a lot more stimuli. So that's how it kind of looks like on a daily basis. Now, the good news is you can be sensitive in positive ways where I might have a deeper reaction to a color or the sunset. It's like an emotional or spiritual experience for me sometimes with those things. Or a positive sensation of positive touch can be just like electrifying to me, or if I'm with my beloved and we're connecting sexually, I mean, it's like you have almost like this 360-degree erogenous zone, with as being highly sensitive. So those are some beautiful aspects of it. But so sensitivity in just like every single way you can think about it.
Do you feel like, for me at least, when I started waking up, meaning when I had this feeling of like something shifting within me, I started becoming more sensitive. I started to pick up more on subtle energies, my sense of smell, my sense of taste, my sense of hearing. So I want to just point this out, is like when we are moving through a shift or a change or this awakening, spiritual awakening practice or process that we're going through as humans, it is very normal to start to become very sensitive to the TV blaring or the radio always on, or
Yeah.
like the perfume that we're putting on, because we're shifting energetically. So if you want to maybe speak a little bit about your process of awakening and how maybe just tools and techniques that can support this hypersensitivity.
Oh yeah. So and I think this is important to recognize, is that I think that used to be a sign of spiritual awakening, was becoming more sensitive, and then there were a lot of people who were born already sensitive, and I think there's a reason in that. I don't know if it's necessary to go into that. I talk about it a lot in my work, but yeah. So so I was already sensitive. But then when I went through my first, what I would consider genuine spiritual awakening about 10 years ago, immediately two major shifts. Well, gosh, more major. I could barely drink coffee anymore, which I love. The taste of, my family's Cuban, so having Cuban coffee was always like something that was around. I still like the taste of it, but I have to be very careful because now I'm like extra sensitive to caffeine. So like I stopped drinking coffee immediately. I stopped eating meat immediately. I stopped drinking alcohol immediately.
Wow.
And I became allergic to gluten, like all at the same time. I mean, it was just like within a 2-month period of time, all of these things shifted for me. And that was hard. It was hard I was married at the time. So my husband was trying to keep up with like all these changes with this woman who was like becoming a different person overnight. So God bless him for having to like navigate that. And then also my friends, what we used to do, like, and my ex-husband was in the food and wine industry. So it's like all these things we used to participate in, I was just so no longer a match for, wanting to go to bed even earlier, or having a deeper connection with my food. I was just so like, I had this understanding of this food I was putting in my body. I could feel the energetics of like, just like high vibrational foods versus foods that would bring me down and make me feel really heavy, which is one of the reasons why I stopped drinking alcohol and coffee and not having meat. It wasn't like I went through spiritual awakening and I was like, oh, I shouldn't do these things anymore. I literally vibrationally was not a match for them. And if I did have them, like if I had a little bit of alcohol, it would just like I could feel my energy tank. It was like putting lead in my veins, where I didn't feel that before. So that's how it affected me. I mean, I was already sensitive, and then you add a spiritual awakening on that, and it just was more and more sensitivity. So I had to navigate that, and it's not easy. So if any of you guys are going through that, let you know, like, take it at whatever pace that feels good to you, but just recognize that might be completely a normal aspect of what you're going through, and to be gentle with yourself. Do not expect yourself to be the same person you were before. Allow yourself to unfold and kind of have a rebirth. The more you accept yourself, though, the more other people will. The more we think that something's wrong, it's like then that gets projected onto other people. If we can have a very gentle conversation with those around us and say, hey, this is what's going on with me, and ask them to support us in the new changes, that will really help too. But and find as many people who can genuinely support you in those new habits. I think also saves sanity when you don't feel like you're trying to be the vegetarian, gluten-free non-drinker at the tailgate party that you used to go to, and like maybe you'll still go to those things and that's okay, but if that's all you do, you'll really feel alone. And I hear that a lot. People go through a spiritual awakening, especially initially, like, I'm so alone, because we have to really shift our perspective. And we might some of our friends we can probably still keep, some of them will fall away. I think it's the nature of the beast, but I think it's really important to make sure we surround ourselves with people who can support like our new habits and everything we're going through.
Yes, I can definitely share that. When my shift happened, it was this big loss of
Yeah.
friends, of family, of old habits. And although it was easy to shift out of the habitual patterns because they just wasn't a resonance, there was still the friends and the family that was pulling me back and saying, but hey, like, come back, let's have those steaks, let's do this, let's do this. And for me, I mean, I still eat meat here and there, but it was just so heavy for me that I would get physically sick if I go back to South Africa and have like a big fat steak and a delicious South African bottled wine, like I would just be sick. And so I feel like what I want to just like, add on to this is like, when you do go through this and you start feeling alone, start reaching out to different groups, and friends and circles and people or go to places once we're out of everything that we're in, that you can go and connect with people that is on the same vibrational level as you. And really anchor in a prayer and an intention. Say, if you're already doing meditation, just ask in your meditation and in your prayer for the people to come into your field. It's so easy when we start letting go of these things that's holding us back. And I know you can resonate with this as well, Kristen, but when we start making space for the new things to come, it just comes. We don't need to know how,
Yeah.
we don't need to know when, but it just will come. So I want to touch on a little bit what you shared earlier before we hopped into this call about, like when you wake up and you go through your process of remembrance, you kind of like go up. And then we have to remember to ground back into the body. And I want you to just go down that alley and speak a little bit to that.
Yeah. I'd love to. And because I think this also speaks on it when you were talking about it, I realized, to be clear, like, I mean, although I am still a vegetarian, there have been phases in the last 10 years where I've eaten a little fish, and like, depending on what I'm going through, or have drank coffee. It's not like I never have coffee. I might have like 3 alcoholic beverages a year. So it's like, it does happen. And I've never been as sensitive as that first year, that first couple of months, that first year. And so I think, just to touch on like what can happen when we initially go through a spiritual awakening, it's important not to try to hold on to anything. I think to be in the flow. So I learned this from a teacher, Adashante. I saw him live one time and he talked about this and it resonated with me, but I actually, at the time, this is years ago now, at the time he spoke about this, I couldn't really fully grasp what he was talking about because I hadn't come back down and in. Now on the other side of it, I'm like, oh, okay, now it's one of my favorite things to teach about because I'm like, I get it. I really do get it. So what he was saying, what I was saying to you earlier, is when you have a spiritual awakening, it's like your consciousness goes out and up. So you're connected to things outside of yourself and maybe outside this physical realm that you just never knew of before, you weren't in contact with. You have a greater awareness. And usually there's a little bit of like a blissful state in it, kind of an like high vibe feeling with its challenges. Yeah, like everything just feels really good. And then so you're going to be really attracted to like good vibes only and that kind of thing. And that's all good. But it's, it doesn't stay that way. And I don't think it's meant to stay that way. And I think we do a disservice on our spiritual path when we think that that's the way it's supposed to be, that we're supposed to be in these altered states of bliss and joy all the time, or that awakening is a state of being. It's not. It is an unfolding that happens over a whole experience of a lifetime and maybe on to many lifetimes, who knows. So yeah, so if we first go out and up, now for me, I remember out and ups, I spent about a year into it before it was starting to come back down. And when it started to come back down into my body, I remember feeling like I was losing something. And so for those of you who've read spiritual texts, or, it's usually in the ages, I think this is when people would say, God, why have you forsaken me? It's like, because after the bliss, after the ecstasy is the void, and or this feeling of maybe more separation, like God is not, we're not connecting to the source, where, and these old spiritual texts is always like, God has forsaken me. But it makes more sense to me now. Like, okay, so when we go back into our body, we're going to lose that initial ultra, like, open experience of kind of more of a high energy state or bliss state. We move back into the body, which I think is an extremely important thing. We want to take awakening into the body. We are meant to be embodied. So we're trying to bring that new consciousness into a body that might not be catching up with us. So our consciousness, like, you can have a realization, and I'm sure you guys know this because you've probably felt it. You have this like awareness and this beautiful ceremony, and you have this download and you get it all, and the next day you're doing the same shit you were doing before, and you're like, what? You're like doing the same bad habit, the same addiction, getting in the fight with your boyfriend, and you're like, what? Yesterday I was all in existence and there was no separation between me and anything else, and today I'm fighting with my boyfriend. Like, what is that? So it's like our bodies are on like a little bit of a slower path than our consciousness is, and we have to be gentle with that. So our bodies take a little longer to catch up. And when we bring that higher consciousness back into our body, sometimes it can be a rude awakening because our body's got a lot of trauma stored into it. There's been a lot of pain. There's a lot of, maybe physical abuse, both externally and things that we've done to ourselves that we have to make amends on. If we've been drinking and partying and abusing drugs, or self-hating, or, participating in any activities where we're really hurting our body and we're kind of numb to it, maybe we don't even realize it. We have then a spiritual awakening. We open up to this higher consciousness. We feel so much better, and we come back into it. It can feel really jarring. It can feel more painful in some ways than it did before the spiritual awakening. And I think if people know this, then they can know when they get to that stage, everything is all right. God has not forsaken you. It's not a punishment. Nothing bad has happened, but it is now time to take that upper awareness and bring it into an embodied beingness. And after so then the next call of action, which is my greatest mission, and like the work that I do, is I help people through shadow work. I help them find the broken pieces from the past and from trauma and put that back together so that they can feel really embodied. They can take the things that were holding them back and the trauma that's on the cellular level and move forward to be the light that they are meant to be in this world. And it will, if we follow the breadcrumbs, if we continue that path, you don't stay feeling like in that pain body or like traumatized for long. Like if we resist it, it might take longer, but if we move with it, as you, I'm sure, can attest to, like there were a number of years where this was my main focus. Like I had to do this for myself, and it wasn't easy. And now I feel like I am moving on to the other side of it. Now, do I still have my days of like moving energy through, or I'm crying, or I'm working through something? Sure. But it was never quite like when I came back into the body and had to deal with that rude awakening of being a higher consciousness being in a body that wasn't like, hadn't done that like, healing crisis. I think you have to really purge all that stuff that gets stuck in the body.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. Oh my goodness, there's just, when you speak, there's just so much of my journey, like, like going in my mind's eye, and I'm thinking like different ways. I was deeply in my spiritual rude awakening during my times in Aspen. And I'm just like having these flashbacks of these times of shifting, and really feeling like, oh my gosh, everything is love and light, and like is so good. And then going back into like this deep, dark hole of like all these emotions and traumas that would come up that I haven't processed, because no one's ever told me that I had to feel these feelings or process these emotions that I haven't processed. And just really going deep into, like, I remember at that time it was hot yoga, right? At that hot yoga studio in Aspen. And just, I would like get out of the thing and I was just like, all these things would come up and I'm just like, oh my God, it's like, what is happening with me? So I think it's really important to just share that it's a little by little, it's a step by step, even though it seems like this huge mountain in front of you. If you could just start to like work with one emotion at a time or one trauma at a time and just allow yourself to really sit with it and digest it. And my saying is always, you have to feel it to heal it. And just really, like if something is like really deep ingrained in you, like an eating disorder, like get a specialist that specializes in that. If you had sexual abuse, go and see a womb healer, like work really like see where it is that you need the help and support with, and really seek out and pray for that person to come into your field to support you, because it's really just like fine tuning all these little things, and then you can come to this place of wholeness, because you're already whole. You just have like these energetic hooks inside of you that needs healing and needs to come back to fullness. So Kristen, I want to just, say thank you so much for coming on today, and kind of like close with like, what is grounding into simplicity for you? Looking at grounding and simplicity and just your own unique expression of what that is for you and looks and feels like for you.
Yeah. I mean, again, we could probably talk for hours and hours, days and days on this subject matter. But I think for me, grounding in simplicity is really like coming into the realization of who you really are. It's not looking at you or me or anybody else and being like, oh, well, that's what it's supposed to look like. You have to understand who you are, because this just feels like a huge like message right now. We look at human beings usually as if they're like balls of clay that we need to mold. We look at children that way. We look at each other that way. We get into relationship and we try to change the person. And people really are more like, we come into this life like a seed. If a seed for a oak tree, already has all the genetic coding of what that tree is going to be like and the size and the leaves it's going to have. It's already there. All we have to do is plant it, water it, nourish it, let it grow and unfold, right? Like let it blossom, let it unfold. And so who you are in the most simple form is, find that, because that's going to look totally different. Like when people they looked at my life, some people would think that I have a more complicated life. Some people might say that I have a less complicated life, but really like it's about knowing what's essential for you, I think, is how we can ground into simplicity, as well as finding those practices that help you be embodied in this body. And if coming back down and in feels jarring, or if you come into contact with that trauma, like you said, then get people to help you through that until being embodied as a spiritual being starts to feel really good and like more natural, because embodiment is so crucial. The last thing I was going to say is that a lot of people who want to work with me are really wanting to tap into their intuition, which I'm a huge teacher of, especially as being like super sensitive, to tap into those sensitive awarenesses. And I always start with a simple practice that gets you into your body and feeling sensations. And when I ask people, all right, what are you feeling? And they'll say peace and calm. And then I'll be like, but you can't actually feel peace. What do you feel as in sensations? And they're like, it's like their minds opens up and it's like, oh, I feel like openness in my heart and like a little buzzing feeling in my shoulders. So I think that when we recognize, even though we use feeling words, that's totally fine. But most of us stay on the level of thought, and even emotion, we're describing it through words. And I want to ask you, if you're having a anxiety or happiness or sadness, then ask yourself next time you are describing that to yourself or thinking that you're that, what is your body feeling? What are the sensations in your body? Because until you get, like most people go top down, and I want to go like a bottom up approach. Start with your body, start with the sensations. And then if you want to use descriptive words to describe them, then great. So like those are my things that I think that grounding into simplicity, if you have those, you know who you are, you know what's important to you, and you know how to get into your body and feel your body and know what it's saying to you. Those are the tools. You don't, everything else can come and go, but no one can take that away from you.
Mm, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. I'd also like for you to just share where people can find you online, or if you have any accounts, or where they can follow you and get in touch with you.
Oh, as always. Well, if you want to contact me, you can contact me at KristinVergara.com. You can also find more information. I do a lot of information on like empath awakening and highly sensitive people and that sort of thing on my YouTube channel, which is Kristin Vergara. So you can just very simply search that. And I also have a Facebook group called the Mirror Graphic Universe. And I do live teachings and live energy forecasts and tarot readings every Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's a lot of fun, and I love to have more like-minded people there. So hopefully you can all come.
Yeah, and I will also post all of Kristen's pages and everything on the comments below if people wanted to kind of fine tune and go into there. But thank you so much, babe. I'm so grateful that we had this time together and for you sharing all the beautiful stories and gifts and wisdom. And yeah, it's many blessings for you. And for all of you who are listening, thank you so much. And stay tuned for the next episode of Grounding into Simplicity. Much love.